Well, okay. So there is all this controversy out there about low carb diets, ketogenic diets, and there's a lot of people who are pretty damn religious about this stuff. We've already explained that there's different ways of achieving that. But, at the beginning of this conversation, I made a point of saying that a lot of your perspective and mine comes from looking at the evidence. It isn't a personal bias. It's like, well, this shit works because it works. This is what the science says. This is what the evidence says. So if we're going to come from that perspective, nobody's throwing any money at you for mentioning a particular brand or there's no magic thing here that you're coming up with other than the evidence. If you were a betting man and you had to throw everything into one thing, what's it going to be in terms of a couple of key bits of advice that our listeners, and bearing in mind they're active, to get those rapid results for that optimal body composition? What's their new religion, their new belief going to be, Alan?
The way that I answer that is that none of the details matter if you cannot sustain the program. There are different scenarios. There are different it depends types of scenarios. I have experienced clients who need to look a certain way within 6 weeks for a movie part, for example. I've had many clients who need to look a certain way within 4 months because they're going to step on stage. Us outside of those scenarios, those time-crunched scenarios, people have to just realize that it's okay to take a full year to undo the body composition damage, the fat gain, the muscle loss that you incurred over the last 10 to 20 years of being a working adult. It's okay to take a year to undo your bad stuff. So I think from that standpoint, it really comes down to just getting the big rocks, the fundamentals straight. And I may sound like a broken record, but a reasonably healthy food selection that comprises a diet with adequate macronutritional targets and, of course, adequate micronutrition for health. I'm not a stickler for very specific foods across the food groups. A lot of them have overlapping benefits. But, truly, aside from that, and I'm not somebody who's going to make everybody track every gram of protein, carbohydrate, and fat, and track every calorie. There's a spectrum of what people favor and what they can tolerate with respect to the degree of micromanagement of the program. Some people it drives them absolutely insane. And some people should never in their life weigh a food. Some people should never in their life enter grams and calories into an app. But, there's a spectrum of tolerance for that. And sometimes you need to pull those tools out in order to bring people over to reality. But just the super basic, boring stuff is what people need to realize. If you want to gain weight, caloric surplus and resistance training. If you want to lose weight, caloric deficit and resistance training. Both sides, the faster it happens, the greater the risk to either fat gain on the surplus side or muscle loss on the deficit side. And then you go into the weeds from there, different types of protein, animal versus plant protein, distribution, and even training types, training volume. There's so many things to go in there. But like with the training world, it's like if your goal is to maintain your muscle mass, and it's not a particularly extraordinary degree of muscle mass, then the minimum effective dose is surprisingly low for resistance training. On the other end of the spectrum, if you want to maintain an extraordinary level of muscle mass, then the volume goes up quite a bit. And so honestly, I hate to say this, Laurent, but I think the big answer to what you asked is it freaking depends on the individual goal and situation.